And so, yes, it's, you know, there's people walking around praying and whatever, but it was okay that I chose not to do that, and I could just be there.
Absolutely.
So don't feel like you can't go visit if you don't want to.
I'm married to a non-hand, although he is.
He's not hand.
I mean, we are the prototypical people. We sit in the front on the mobile row, which anyone is allowed to sit on. I've just been sitting there for so long. But I'm, you know, crazy. I will undignify myself even more kind of worshiper, and he's just, you know, he used to just stand there with his coffee cup.
Right.
He was frozen chosen. He grew up Presbyterian. But he just, you know, he's definitely starting to get a little more comfortable. But he also keeps me balanced, so I'm not going off into La La Land. But there are people that go off into La La Land too. So the entire spectrum is welcome in the upper room.
I think what Creighton said earlier about, I mean, or maybe what Christian said that Creighton, you know, exemplifies, which is open door, come as you are, come. That's what upper room, I think, says out loud to everybody at Chapelwood. And I think, hopefully, all of Chapelwood says that all the time. But sometimes, but y'all are the loudest voice saying it, I think, to me. And I love it. So.
Go ahead, Mark.
Well, I was gonna, I hope I'm also, this is my son, my wife. My son's the one that's the loud one. But anyway, yes, I helped with the greeting, and it's really it's awesome because the way that it's situated is it's kind of on the upper room is kind of on the corner of the church. But me as a greeter on the front, or on the parking lot level, is I can see those people that are driving around trying to find a parking spot. Find a parking spot, like, is this the right place? Am I here? So I can actually just walk out, open the door, and say, yeah, come on in. I know you're like, come on in, we're ready to go. And that's if everyone has their first day at church, yeah, and to be able to say, oh, whew, it's okay. That is so just invigorating to say, yeah, you're welcome. This is the body of Christ. We'll get you where you need to be. So and you're in the right place. And so we've actually seen firsthand, or I've seen firsthand, where there's that person who's incredibly late, but you can tell once they're there that you can see that when the worship occurs and they can hear God's word, that just the pain is just kind of falling away and the healing can begin. And having a prayer team especially is helpful because, and actually, our camera person, Joanna, is there. She could maybe remember this, but there was a woman who came in and she was definitely needed, visually, I could tell she needed prayer with, to be prayed over, prayed with. And we were able to, because I'm an opposite gender, we were able to say, let's get you, we're going to meet your need. We want to listen with you and talk with you and pray with you. But for now, let's take in the word, and then we'll get back to you. And for her, that was great because she was still trying to shepherd her children and get them engaged as well. And that young woman, she's been released, she's been back. So I mean, that's really, it's keeping those doors open to the body of Christ and letting people say don't let the world keep you out. And definitely the relaxed atmosphere of the attire. I mean, what Creighton said earlier, I'm a big advocate of dressing comfortably because there's no dress code in God's kingdom. So anyway, I just wanted to share that out.
So I want to take as an educator, I know there's a time I want to hear from y'all. So the next period is questions. We're going to skip our last question. So for 10 minutes or so, 5 to 10 minutes, whatever questions that you have for us.
How good are those signs you guys have at the mall?
Oh, that's a Christian question.
Well, the best thing I could say is that there's a great return on investment for that.
People come.
Yeah, the person who leads worship for us, who now has become a Chapelwood superstar, I guess, is a woman named Jasmine Jenkins. Now she's Dr. Jasmine Jenkins. And Jasmine was walking through the mall one day and saw that billboard right outside of, or near the Apple store. And also her sister and brother-in-law saw it as well. Brother-in-law is a PhD chemist. Sister was a Johnson & Johnson salesperson. And so they all showed up after they saw that. Now, back then, we didn't have much diversity. The diversity was Joanne and me. to us. So they felt like, wow, just bait and switch. They showed up, and for whatever reason said, they haven't gone anywhere. They've been around for more than 3 years now. Jasmine started off as a volunteer, and as recently as a year and a half ago, like last year, year before last, I'm sorry, the Rogers, her brother and sister-in-law, were part of the team that led our stewardship campaign here at Chapelwood, co-chairs on that. So not only has it brought us people, we get people virtually every week saying, how'd you meet us? Well, we saw you on the board. But it's brought us leaders, which has even been more incredible to me. People who now are part of the fabric of all of Chapelwood, and not just Chapelwood. It's been great. The church has followed us now, and now that the main church, or all of Chapelwood, now has another board in the Memorial City Hall.
Okay, anybody else?
Don't all raise your hands at one time.
I've got something. I grew up in a Baptist church, and actually they were so conservative that clapping was considered not very. It wasn't really accepted.
You don't do it.
You just did. And so even to this day, it's just out of habit. I just don't clap, and it's not because I'm disrespecting. It's just one of those things I've never done. But I was in college, and a friend of mine, actually my sister's roommate, was invited to sing at a revival at the African Baptist Church in Waco. And she asked me to come up to Waco and go with her. I didn't really understand why. After we got in that side of town, I realized I was the bodyguard. Because she was about 5 foot tall, and her skin was about this color. She actually wore China doll makeup with red hair, and she was really white. And so we go into this church, and they were surprised we showed up. Y'all actually drove over here, really? Yeah. And so for the first time, I really felt like a minority. And until you're placed into that position, you don't really understand what that feels like. And so I went from one side of Baptist to the other side in about 30 minutes. And if you've never been to one of those services, you need to pack a lunch or an energy drink or something. We were there 6 hours. And really, and I tell you what, we walked out of there, and if you didn't feel the Lord, somebody needed to check your pulse. It was really a cool experience. We really had a great time. But ever since then, I've always questioned what makes a church diverse, because I've never been to a church where they check your membership card. Anyone's welcome. But for some reason, we segregate ourselves. And, to find what you call diversity, I'm always asking myself this question, because our kids are growing up in a society that is very diverse. I mean, they go to school with kids of mixed race and whatever. And I mean, Asian Americans, African Americans, and anymore it's hard to identify people of our race. So we're becoming a very diverse culture, yet we tend to still segregate. And what makes your service so mixed? I mean, is it outreach, or is it just, because I think even in our services we welcome everybody, they don't show up. So it has to be something toward outreach before you get the word out there that we're accepting people. Is that what's the real difference?
Well, the good news is that about a month and a half ago, I was asked to ask that same question and to present for 12 minutes at a TED Talk, kind of a TED type of environment. And not the big TED. That's on the vision board for me. I boiled it down to a couple of principles. The first is being intentional. We are intentional about being diverse from the front of the room to the back of the room in everything we do. I have to work on this one right here. She will tell you. Because she's probably more used to just saying people are people. If they want to pray, they'll pray. And I'll be sitting there going, you know that everyone you had praying was African American. That's not who we are. We do that from our band to our singers to when I'm not preaching there, Andy Cunningham is preaching there. That's intentional, so that it's not like there's only going to be an African American preacher. There's only going to be so it's intentional that way. The picture in front has to match what's going on inside. The other thing that has to match is the culture has to match. And culture is not race. Culture is about things that we call ours, like music, art, language, what have you. So a couple of cultural things have to be diverse. First thing, our services are never more than an hour and 25 minutes. So the 6-hour thing won't ever happen. A 2-hour thing won't ever happen.
Release.
You know, well, the release might. Yeah.
But for Chapelwood, that's like uber long.
Right.
Exactly. But for a person of color, that's uber short.
Yeah.
They come in and go, that's it.
Let's get raised Catholic.
You know, they walk.
Because he was raised Catholic.
But for so many people coming who are Hispanic or African American, they are used to a 2-hour service. That's just normal. An hour and a half, 2 hours, normal, right? And we're sitting there going, I love you, and there's nothing you can do about it. And I'm, come on back band at an hour and 10 minutes. I'm trying to get us done. And that usually means the past, I have to preach shorter, or whatever we have to do. But that's part of it. That's another part of it. The third thing I think that's very important for us is our music is the same music that white kids hear at Passion conferences. And we do that intentionally. Now, we may do it a little more soulfully, but you're not going to hear gospel music virtually at all unless I'm doing a chorus or what have you. And we do that very intentionally because the soul of the music, we do it in a way that there's feeling and that people who have color can especially feel it. But we don't want to miss people hearing the message. Hymns and liturgical music are really based on messages that are carried by the lyric. So we follow that same thing. So you'll hear music from Chris Tomlin, you'll hear music from Jesus Culture, and the kinds of things you might hear in KSBJ, or if you go to a Passion conference, you hear those songs. I'm Desperate for You. Those kinds of songs are what you hear. With choruses that you can pick up that have depth. The way that a friend of ours who has a church that is about 3,000 people in Charlotte, North Carolina, that's totally diverse, African-American pastor, the way he puts it is this. He says, we do music that white people can know and people of color can feel. That's intentional. So we create a culture where if you walk in, wherever walk of life you walk into, there's an interesting middle ground that we've found. The last piece about this is that prayer is the center of everything we do. We don't lift ourselves up as a culture about music or a culture about preaching. I think we do both of those quite well. But the center of everything we do is this interesting experience of prayer that allows you to find the way that you pray, whether it be lighting a candle, putting something in our prayer wall. Have y'all seen our prayer wall? Or heard about the prayer wall? We have a wailing wall in the upper room. Writing something in a sandbox, a sin or what have you, washing it away is a way of saying that God has forgiven me on this. Or having someone pray for you, or even just sitting in your seat and quietly contemplating what's going on. And many times we actually say these things out loud just to make sure people know you have permission to just be yourself and approach the throne of grace however you want to approach it. What that does is it allows the majority culture to feel like, I don't have to do anything charismatic, but it also allows people who are coming in from outside of a Chapelwood type church to feel like, oh wow, I get to express things the way that I probably have become accustomed to, which includes high church people who will go and light a candle in a second, and come from Catholic backgrounds or Episcopal backgrounds and go, I want to do that. So it's all about being intentional, wrapping it all up, and saying that if we're going to be a church that looks like Houston or a church that looks like heaven, that we need to actively find ways to reflect that in everything we do.
And I just want to add, as a layman, why I joined the board. It wasn't the fact, it helped that I knew him already. But y'all can ask my wife. When we first got here, she had a relationship with Scott Indris as far as doing outreach at the terrace. And I was looking at becoming a part of a multi-ethnic church. What made the difference between me going to the sanctuary and the upper room was that when you get there, you realize this same mission in my mind, the same mission that was in his mind. It wasn't just becoming part of but it was mission oriented. It's like intentional to become diverse, not just, and so what that did for me being African American, I don't feel like I compromised myself when I came here. Had I joined the sanctuary possibility, I might have felt like I compromised my past, because there are some things I still hold on to my core being from my African American church experience. And I feel that with the upper room, I'm not compromising. I'm growing at the same time, brothers like Dave Drone, but at the same time, my identity stays intact. That's important.
I think we've said this about the release before because it looks remarkably unproduced, but there's a lot of production that goes into it. And it's becoming more and more the same on Sunday mornings, is that we frame the house, we build the house, and the Lord furnishes it. And that means He accepts us for whoever and however we are when we walk in the door. And so we don't have necessarily the right to say, well, we're only going to worship one way. We just open it up and just let the Lord fill the house, and He really has.
I want to add one thing before, now that we're going over time,
Right.
at this point is even more effective. Growing up in Chapelwood, growing up going to 945, I think there's probably a handful of times where I haven't counted the minutes until the end of the service. I just had an epiphany. I've never once done that with these people, no matter what we're doing. Whether it's at a social event, whether it's at the upper room, I'm happy for just our time together to just continue indefinitely. I've never counted the minutes until an upper room service has been over, or until a social gathering with this group. And
As they count on it.
So I just realized that that's really effective because there's just a culture of you're part of it, you're welcome. This is a group you want to be with, whether it's church time or not. And like you said, it's blending the two together. Like, okay, well, church service is over, who wants to go to lunch? You know, it's not all right, this is done, now I can go do my life. This is life.
And I just want to say this, if y'all really want to find out what this is all about, y'all not doing yourself justice by just listening to this. This is just a snapshot. If you want to really see this, 11:15.